Every business has a logo, and when it's yours, it matters. GPS is a 30-year local Las Vegas company that produces custom merch, like hats and apparel, drinkware and totes, blankets and bandanas, really any kind of swag you can imagine that features your logo or message. They're experts at finding or creating the right products for the season and the reason that fit your budget and timeline. Check out the GPS website at gpslasvegas.com, where there's a world of products to promote your brand.
Las Vegas clearly needs more affordable housing. And when you look at the map of all the empty space around our city, I guess it kind of makes sense, right? Why not build more houses on public lands? That's the solution being embraced by politicians on both sides of the aisle here in Nevada, from our Democratic senators to GOP Governor Joe Lombardo and even presidential candidate Donald Trump. But today on CityCast Las Vegas, we're talking with Vinny Spottelson from the Sierra Club, who tells us that the equation of public lands plus affordable housing isn't quite so simple. It's Monday, September 23rd. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. All right, Vinny, I got to ask right off the bat. In a time when partisan politics are at a fever pitch, we finally land on a topic that major Dems and Republicans seem to agree on, opening up public lands to build housing. So why is the Sierra Club shitting on this bipartisan effort to solve our crisis of affordable housing?
Well, I'll start off by talking about a little bit of the differences. So yes, folks from both parties have embraced expanding Las Vegas's footprint onto public lands for housing. There's a difference between the approach taken by President Trump and Lombardo, where they're just kind of writing letters and saying stuff that doesn't seem thought out or planned at all. And then there's also another proposal called the Southern Nevada Economic Development and Conservation Act. That's a bill put forward by Senator Catherine Cortez Masto that actually has it does expand the sprawl footprint of Las Vegas, and we do think that part of the bill is misguided. But it has other components, such as increased conservation. It would increase the size of the Red Rock National Conservation Area. It would increase the size of the Sloan Canyon National Conservation Area. It would permanently protect the Desert National Wildlife Refuge permanently as wilderness areas, so there couldn't be any industrial activity in those lands. So it's a qualitatively different approach, although on that side of it, there is a troubling agreement that expanding onto public lands for housing would be a good solution.
Well, and that's where I want to really focus, because generally speaking, Vinny, this issue of opening up public lands in general to solve the affordable housing crisis has been embraced by Susie Lee very vocally. Joe Lombardo, yeah, he's writing letters, but it's also like a cornerstone. I'm just wondering, how do you think that this issue of opening up public lands for affordable housing has become the Kumbaya campaign? Why are both major parties behind this initiative?
So there's different types of developers, but a lot of the developers that support this approach have gathered into two different organizations. One is called NAIOP. It's a commercial real estate entity. And then one is the Southern Nevada Home Builders Association. Both of those organizations give money on both sides. And both of those organizations are lobbying federal candidates saying, we can't build affordable housing because we don't have land. And I know this because I used to work for Congresswoman Dina Titus and Senator Harry Reid, where they came to me and told me those things. So if you're a politician and you have to know a little bit about a lot of issues, and somebody says, here's the solution to affordable housing, just give us more land. It seems simple enough and it sounds good.
Right.
There's a lot of problems with this approach.
Well, before we get into the problems, I want to finish up on this issue. Is it just the money that the vested parties, these developers of different ilk, are giving to these politicians? And that's why this simplistic answer is being forwarded in such a very coordinated and seemingly bipartisan way?
I think it's that everybody recognizes that there is an affordable housing crisis, and so while we can be cynical that they're choosing a bad solution that's not actually going to solve the problem, the fact that both parties recognize that something needs to be done, that Nevadans can't afford rent or can't afford to buy properties, that's a good sign. And what I'm hoping is that there'll be more public conversation, that more of the academic entities will be involved to really explore the full range of solutions that'll actually start to get at this problem. Because just one example, if the land is free, if the land is completely free, if there's zero land cost, it would still cost $250,000 to build a single family home. That's parts and materials, that's permitting fees, not red tape that's unnecessary, like that's health and safety regulations to make sure your house doesn't explode, right? Those are labor costs for the construction workers to build these houses. So those things are expensive, and they're even more expensive for a single family home, and they're even more expensive for a single family home miles outside of the city center. And so it's become a huge problem in this conversation is we've disconnected that affordable housing conversation from the options and opportunities that are here in the Valley that we could have to actually build better units.
So is it your understanding that when we talk about developing homes on these, undeveloped public lands that exist basically outside the boundaries of our city right now, that they're just talking about doing these more expensive to build single family homes? Is that mostly what's up?
That is the majority, absolutely. So there's recently a study conducted jointly by the city of Henderson with Clark County. And they asked a consulting firm out of Denver to come up with a sort of plan of, all right, if we expanded Las Vegas's footprint down to Jean, which is currently what's being contemplated, is take the disposal boundary, the amount of BLM land that can be sold to developers. They were asked to look at what kind of plans and develop. And again, they came out with a proposal of more than 60% single family homes with, of course, giant mansions that are on the edge closest to the public lands, with the multifamily homes and the apartments being closer into the center away from that public land access. So with these larger single family homes that are contemplated between Vegas and Jean, are we really thinking that those are going to be affordable to your average Las Vegan? No, I'm picturing signs that are advertising Anthem 2 from the low 800s. This isn't something that the regular middle class Las Vegan can afford.
I guess the quick rebuttal to that is that if you're building any housing stock, then that creates less of a demand on the existing housing stock, which would drive down the prices. You've heard that as being sort of the rebuttal to your argument.
And that's the simple supply-demand proposal that's being presented to elected officials. And it just doesn't hold up under the research, right? What impacts home prices is not as simple as there's more homes or there's less homes. The type of housing impacts the prices. The investment community affects the prices. So investors are buying up homes around Las Vegas right now, sitting on those homes, waiting for them to appreciate in value, instead of selling them to actual home buyers who would plan on living in those residences. Those types of things drive up the cost of housing just as much as sort of land availability.
We need to be talking more about the arts happening on our UNLV campus. I love walking across those beautifully manicured grounds and making a beeline to the magnificent Oldenburg flashlight sculpture by the Performing Arts Center to see great performances. Like on Saturday, September 28th, where a one-night-only dance performance of Body Traffic is happening at 7:30 p.m. Direct from LA, Body Traffic is brimming with stunning performers, technical mastery, and commitment to the most innovative repertoire created by the most in-demand choreographers. It's a cutting-edge dance company taking the stage with compelling works that embody the energy, sophistication, and sheer joy of dance. This program includes pieces based on the music of Etta James, James Brown, and others. Go see what Broadway World is called absolutely joyous and oh so entertaining. Buy your tickets today for Body Traffic at pac.unlv.edu.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
All right. Well, Vinny, here's your time to convince our listeners that politicians and developers are wrong. Run down your list and tell me why the Sierra Club thinks that this move to take over BLM land is misguided.
Well, and I would not say all developers are wrong. A lot of developers do understand the value of building within communities mixed-use development. But sprawl, the type of development that's being contemplated by President Trump, or the type of development that would would take Las Vegas down to Jean, is bad for a number of reasons. One, it's really bad for our air quality and for climate change, right? That's more car trips. Those are longer car trips. Those are polluting more in the inner city, which are typically lower income communities and more at-risk communities, because you're bringing the car pollution from the outskirts into the inside of town to actually access the jobs or the other things that we have in our community, like stadiums, for example. The other main issue, the front burning issue, is water. We have a water crisis. You can see it if you just go visit Lake Mead. There's a giant white bathtub ring, and that water level is going down. We capture a lot of our water use and we recycle it. So any indoor water use, not any, but most indoor water use that we use inside is taken to a drain, treated, and returned to Lake Mead. We do not capture outdoor landscaping use. So the biggest user of water, the biggest waste of water we have, are giant landscaping projects, such as when you expand sprawl development and you have not just housing, but you have parks and you have, we've done a good job of removing that ornamental turf, the grass between the curb and the business. Well, still those desert plants and the rocks take water that we wouldn't otherwise be using. So all of that adds up to be a gigantic net water loss. That same study that City of Henderson and Clark County did estimated 49 million gallons of consumption a day. So in a time where we need to be lower...
extra for just this proposed, say, Jean development would be that much?
That's that much more a day. That's about 10% of Southern Nevada's additional 10% of Southern Nevada's water usage. We're trying to cut our water usage. We're trying to lower that.
Yeah, well, Vinny, let me just interrupt. Do we even have that water available? We talk so much on this podcast about Colorado River allocations and the amount of water that Las Vegas gets versus other states and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. Has anyone worked through those numbers to see if that level of water is available just for that area of development?
What I hear from people that work for these agencies, whether it's the Water Authority or the Water Reclamation Agency, they say it's a bad idea. We do not hear that in public statements from these folks because they need to project confidence in Las Vegas's water supply. We need to show that we are conserving water to maintain our credit ratings so that Moody's and S&P will keep us high rated so that we can continue to bond and get capital investment in our community. So Southern Nevada Water Authority is not going to come out publicly, or at least has not yet come out publicly and said, we don't have the water for more growth or more sprawl. Now, all of the Colorado River is used right now. Every last drop, it dries up before it goes to Mexico. But actually, we're a little under our allocation in Southern Nevada because Southern Nevada Water Authority has been so good that we are not actually using our full allocation, which is a good thing because some of the cuts that have been contemplated by the Bureau of Reclamation, where they're going to have to make cuts to California, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, some of the cuts that they've proposed would take us under this number, where we literally wouldn't have the water allocation. We wouldn't be legally allowed to take the amount of water out of the Colorado River to supply this new development if those cuts were to happen in the future.
Okay, so you mentioned climate change, you mentioned water. Any other reasons why?
Another huge reason, and there's many, but another big one is transportation and transit. So right now, RTC bus service does not reach every dwelling within a walkable distance in the existing footprint of the Las Vegas Valley. This plan does not contemplate any additional funding to meet the transportation needs of the people that are already living here, much less expand transit access into this sort of Vegas to Gene sprawl development. So that presents a number of problems for transit. One of them is it means that you're still dependent on cars. And if we're trying to build, and the excuse for all of this is affordable housing, let's think of somebody who's trying to climb up the economic ladder. If they need a car, that's another imposition. What we should be doing with affordable housing is making sure that any affordable housing unit that we build is connected to our transit service so that they can get the services they need, regardless of whether or not they can afford a car.
Okay, well, I'll take those as your top three. Can you rattle off any others if there are some?
It's a bad use of taxpayer money. When you're constantly leapfrog sprawl, you're extending the roads out, you're extending the services out, and you're paying for it. They try to recoup that in development fees, but you don't get as much development fees, say, if you built a mixed-use development here in the valley, where you're building more units, you're making more property tax money, and you're spending less to get it there, right? You're spending less on miles and miles of new roads, for example, or miles and miles of new sidewalks. Maybe you're just upgrading the existing road and sidewalk. That's a lot better use of tax money than constantly chasing and trying to catch up to sprawl development.
Well, let me just ask this then. We absolutely need affordable housing. And you suggest that infill is where people should be looking, the existing core of the city right now. But is that really a viable solution? Don't a lot of developers say it just doesn't pencil out?
And a lot say it does. And we're seeing examples of that infill penciling out in Chinatown. We're seeing that around North Las Vegas City Hall. It does take a little bit of different approach. But actually, what we're also finding is these are bigger, and that you can actually make a lot of money off of these. So it's not that developers are losing money off of infill development by any means. Just go talk to those companies developing those projects.
All right. Well, Vinny, I called it a kumbaya moment earlier. But despite all the bipartisan support for opening up public lands, as you mentioned, there are different proposals out there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to break it down really quick, and I want you to tell me if I've got it right. Okay. So we've got Catherine Cortez Masto, who essentially has been working with different groups to essentially come up with a compromise. Like, we're going to develop undeveloped public lands, but we're also going to conserve parts of public lands. And it's sort of a swap of sorts. And she's gotten a lot of environmental groups to sort of sign off on that. Then you've got Governor Joe Lombardo, who keeps writing these letters saying there's way too much red tape. You guys need to streamline this process and let us ask for these lands in a much more efficient way. And then you've got presidential candidate Donald Trump, who earlier this month said, you know what? I'm with the governor on this. We need to open up stuff. We need to make it faster, and we're going to start small, but then we're going to go big. We're going to Sim City the F out of the desert. We're going to create beautiful new communities out in the middle of nowhere. We're going to reclaim the frontier spirit. We're going to have Hollywood moving studio lots here. We're going to have manufacturing. We're going to make Nevada great again, right? Well, first of all, did I get that breakdown right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine Cortez Masto's approach is the only one that's legally sound and in sort of a reality of what the actual federal lands process is for transferring land.
Okay.
The stuff that Trump and Lombardo are talking about under federal law takes years. And then would have an additional problem of Nevada wouldn't actually see any money from those land sales because all the lands that they're contemplating would be outside of what we call the Southern Nevada Public Lands Management Act boundary, or the SNPLMA boundary. So they would just go to the federal treasury, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. But what Trump is also saying is that he's going to kind of do it with no taxes, and he's also going to pull back all regulations so that people would build without having to comply with any regulations. And he seemed to get a big cheer from the Nevada audience when he said that. Yeah. I'm telling from your face that you don't think any of that is viable or real. But
the only way that could be real is if he did it illegally and then the Supreme Court said, you're immune, which they've, set a precedent. So it's a scary thought to contemplate that he could just start transferring land to developers and they outside of any legal process, any federal, law that already exists, that he just starts giving it away and they start building. And then, the Supreme Court says, well, you're president, you're immune.
So does that mean in comparison that the Sierra Club is happy with the CCM compromise and support it?
Well, no, again, we cannot support the bill as written because of the sprawl. So we really think the sprawl is a misguided approach. We'd like to see a new bill without the sprawl from taking Las Vegas to Jean. But we do support a lot of the parts of the bill that Catherine Cortez Masto, our senator, has championed that would create more conservation, more outdoor recreation opportunities. Clearly we think that the Moapa Paiute people deserve more of their land back.
I mean, sorry to interrupt, but obviously You're the Sierra Club. You love the parts of the bill where conservation of lands is being promoted, but you don't like what you have to give up to get to that. So the Sierra Club's mission is essentially to protect and responsibly use Earth's resources. I got that off of the main website. Mm-hmm. Is there any growth on undeveloped public lands that your organization would support?
I think that would really be taken on a case-by-case basis, and it would depend on the place. But drive down any major street in Las Vegas. If you drive from side to side of town or north to south, you're going to pass by acres and acres of vacant lots that are just sitting there. Come back, let's have that conversation once we actually have a plan to develop those, once we're actually building affordable units of housing in places that are accessible to transit and jobs right now, and then see where our water table is at. Once you have all those calculations, I could theoretically see a place where we say, oh, okay, 1,000 acres there is okay. But the idea of just a 50,000 acre leap down to Jean, without a robust study of all of those considerations, it's just never going to be something we support.
Well, what's Senator Catherine Cortez Masto saying when the Sierra Club points out these things to her?
We've been able to have conversations with the senator on a couple of occasions to express our disappointment with the parts of sprawl in the bill, but we have yet to receive an actual qualitative response that responds substantively on the issues that we're bringing up around things like climate and water. But what I really want, what I think that we need to look at for any of these sprawl plans, whether it's Trump, Lombardo, or the senators, is we really need a robust scientific analysis of things like the water usage, that really contemplate and model scenarios. What if the Bureau of Reclamation cuts the allocation? What then? And that's what we'd really like to see. It's not just a phone call or a meeting. It's an actual detailed study that would actually address the real problems that sprawl creates.
So assuming for just a second, Vinny, that since these public lands are in seemingly everyone's crosshairs, what would the Sierra Club prefer that we do when we're talking about new development in lands that at that point would be opened?
Well, we'd want to see a plan to actually provide transit access. We'd want to see an actual plan to ensure a reliable water supply and an upfront estimate of the costs therein. Because even if the land is available, that doesn't mean that it necessarily needs to be developed. So then we would begin engaging in the state and local government processes to really try to understand the impacts before any development actually proceeds and try to limit those to the furthest extent possible.
Well, Vinny Spottelson from Sierra Club, thanks so much for joining us on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thank you.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, please go tell a friend. You can also rate our show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, Hey Las Vegas. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. It's only my fourth interview today, so my energy is way up.